Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis. Today, we are here with Jeff Pearce. He is an ambient musician, but most importantly, he is a full-time musician, which I know everybody is really striving to get to that level. So he is here to drop some knowledge bombs on what he's done, how he's accomplished things that he's accomplished, and just kind of give us some general guidance. And first, I just want to say thank you, Jeff, for joining us today. We're really happy to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and so for the people who may not be familiar with you or your music, what you're up to, do you want to give just kind of a brief breakdown of who you are, what you do, a bit about your history, and all that fun stuff?
Okay, well, I've been releasing CDs since 1993. I have, gosh, I should keep track. I have 17 albums out, I think. Since then, I play very, very slow instrumental music, and almost all of it's with electric guitar, but it's been very processed to the point that it does not sound like what we think of when we think of electric guitar. And that's about as summarized as I can get.
So just to clarify, so it's like kind of like non-mainstream music that you play, correct?
Oh, it's very non-mainstream.
Okay.
My stream isn't even like 20 miles from the mainstream. It's way off over to the side.
I've only heard a little bit, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify for people that it's not like a commercial sound that you have going in. Okay, cool. No. So basically, can you kind of describe a little bit in detail, kind of like, how do I want to put this? Kind of when you started making money as an artist?
I was fortunate. I was fortunate that I knew from the beginning, from that first album release, that I was a niche musician, that there was not a huge audience for, slow instrumental music at all, but there was a very loyal audience. So I was fortunate from the offset that way back in 1993, I was able to sell some CDs. My goal with that first album release was to just pay off the cost of the CDs. And at that time, to press up 1,000 CDs with artwork and all of that, it was around $3,500. And that seemed like a bargain at the time because other places were charging a lot more. Mm-hmm. And of course, now you can do about 3 CD projects for that price. Yeah. But at the time, it was a serious investment, and I literally relied on brick and mortar shops in my local area because there was no, the internet as we know it now did not exist back then. In 1993. Yep. There was no Amazon, there was no iTunes, there was no CD Baby or Bandcamp. There was nothing. Yep. And so it became a matter of just being very, very persistent in getting my music to radio programs. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the smartest thing I did, because suddenly they would get inquiries from their listeners. What was this thing that I heard? And at the time, a lot of these radio programs had physical mailing lists to where every week they would send out, here's what we played on last week's episode kind of thing. And there was contact information, again, physical address, contact information. So I would get letters in the mail, inquiring about my music. And looking back, that was just, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but it was a great way to build a really loyal fan base, a listener base, just because when you sit down and you pick up pen to paper and then you put it in an envelope, you put a stamp on it, you send it to someone, you're pretty much invested at that point as a listener. And yep. I know, because I did the same thing. I would listen to syndicated radio programs like Music from the Hearts of Space. And they had the same thing going on. Every week they would send out a letter and it had a piece of paper in it. Here's what we played on last week's show. Each artist, there was contact information. And of course I'd get in touch and buy CDs and then later on trade CDs with other artists. So that was a huge lesson for me in just being very responsive to that. If I'd get a letter in the mail, I'd have one out the next day, a return letter to them. And that's something that quite frankly, I kind of miss in the days of just sort of anonymous streaming and things like that. But fortunately, the listener base for my genre of music is older than me, but some are around my age. So they really kind of approach music and the consumption of music a bit differently than maybe some of the other popular mainstream genres. They still want physical media. That's one thing that I get letters about, emails now about just saying, just keep up the physical media. These people have, again, they're kind of audiophiles. They've invested a lot of money in their stereo systems, so they want that physical media. They want the best possible sounding media possible. And they also like the experience, the experience that I had growing up with LPs. I'd open it up, I'd listen to it, I'd look at the jacket, I'd read the liner notes, all of that stuff. And that's something that's missing a bit in the digital age. So I still do my best when I deal with my mailing list or social media posts to kind of have the approach of that one-to-one, I'm writing one person a letter kind of thing.
Fair. So when did you actually start getting like the point where you're actually making decent sales so that way you can make off of it?
Well, yeah, and I completely avoided answering that question, didn't I? And I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent. Yeah, with my first album, again, I was fortunate that it was on CD. It wasn't just a cassette only release. And I don't know how this happened. This was one of those happy accident things, but Mercedes-Benz had a new sound system coming out for their cars, and they wanted to put together basically like a sampler CD, to show the range of that. And someone doing this project for Mercedes-Benz got in touch with me and said, hey, this is what's going on. It'll be a good chunk of change for you. I'm always like a little skeptical, even back then when I was, let's see, 1993, I would have been 26. I was like, well, yeah, we'll see what happens. I doubt and it turns out they were completely legit. They gave me a nice big check. And again, on the CD, there was contact information, and I got a lot of physical CD sales because of that. So that was sort of my introduction to that. And over the years, the income kind of went up and down throughout the mid 90s. Around the time, this sort of, I don't know, I'll call it a dark period, maybe between about year 2000 and when iTunes came along. That was where I was at my lowest. And as far as income goes, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't, there was no way I would have been able to do that full time at that point. And a lot of my friends that were making music in my genre, they just stopped because, I mean, it didn't look like it was going to get better. You had Napster and everyone could listen to your stuff for free, and it was going up on there whether you wanted it to or not. And if someone would take it down, well, someone would put your album back up within a few seconds. It was it was really something kind of scary because I didn't really, that wasn't my scene, so I didn't really fully understand it. And I know that there were some people, and I heard years later that they were using that to listen to music, and they hear something they like and they go buy a CD. Personally, I did not see that from my side of things. That was when sales were just pretty much the lowest for me. But around the time of iTunes, around the time CD Baby came along, that's when things started getting better. CD Baby at that point was kind of seen as sort of a funky kind of non-mainstream place to sell your music, but it was filled with what people call super fans, people that would go to CD Baby and buy 10 CDs at once of a whole bunch of artists. And CD Baby would have those offers every so often to where if you buy more than 3 CDs, your shipping's free. And of course, that would kick things up as well. Right around that time, Amazon.com started opening up a program for independent authors and musicians. And like with most things in my music career, I just say, well, why not? I'll try it. And if it's terrible, I'll leave. And there are some things that were terrible, and I left, and then they left shortly after. So I did the same thing with Amazon, and my music has sold very well there. I've been surprised. CD Baby, it was the same thing. My music was selling pretty well there. And then when Bandcamp came along, I really think that was where I started to see a big turnaround as far as income goes. Nice. Because Bandcamp is completely filled with people who are music addicts. Maybe that's I don't know if that's a good word or not, but
people like me who just go in and buy a bunch of random stuff just to support the indie scene.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I discovered Bandcamp through another musician, and within 24 hours, I think I had purchased like 7 or 8 CDs from people, just because it's like,
behind me are all random Bandcamp purchases that it's like, oh, that looks cool, I'll buy that.
Yeah. And Bandcamp is, I mean, they really are, as of June 9th, 2021, they're really the most musician friendly platform that I have ever dealt with. Everything is about what can we do to connect the musician and their listeners. And they're great about that. I can't think of one bad experience I've had with Bandcamp, either as a customer or as a musician. It's been wonderful. But yeah, a lot of people are doing what you're doing. They're like, we want to support the scene. And they go to Bandcamp, and then they realize it's like, well, even if I didn't want to support an indie scene, there's a lot of great music here that I want to buy and that I'm not seeing other places.
Yeah, that's definitely what I love about Bandcamp, is just the ability to discover artists that I wouldn't otherwise have found because they're not on a label, they're not getting any promotion, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And you were saying earlier that you're still selling quite a lot of physical media because that's what your audience is looking for. What format do you think is performing the best for you? Is it still CDs, or do you think
it's still CDs? And here's why. Again, the average ambient music listener is a little bit older than me. I'm 53 with about a month to go to 54. So I'd say they fall somewhere around 60 or so. And back in the early 80s, I mean, there were LPs and cassettes of this music, but when you're listening to really, really quiet music on headphones, which is kind of the preferred way to listen to this sort of music, on vinyl, you would hear clicks and pops, and it would just sort of take you out of the immersion of experiencing the music. So when CDs came along, that was just among ambient music fans, they were like, listen, you can listen to this whole thing, and you could listen to a 60-minute piece of music without having to flip the LP over, and there's not going to be any skips, there's not going to be any pops or crackles or anything. It's just going to be the music. So that was I know, as someone who listened to ambient music as a late teen, I was completely sold. It's like, yeah, this is great. This is a great format. Now, I know that there are some ambient musicians that are also releasing their album projects on vinyl as well as CD, and some have stopped CD whatsoever. I don't know if that's more for a nostalgia standpoint, but a place like Bandcamp is really good in that if you buy a physical product, whether it be a LP or a CD or a cassette, you have instant access to a download. So you can go ahead and put that one in your phone and listen on headphones if you want, but you'll still have the actual physical product in your library. And that really matters, it seems, to my audience. I still get emails every once in a while because of a couple of digital only projects that I put up on Bandcamp that, were just shorter EPs. They were what they were, kind of thing. And yeah, I get emails, hey, are you going to put this out on CD? It's like, well, okay, maybe I should at some point. But I put those out there thinking that they were such kind of weird projects that maybe no one would want them on CD. Well, someone's always going to want them on CD. So that's just the conclusion I've come to.
I have a follow-up question just in regards to this. So I'm looking at your store now. You only have one available on the store. Is there a reason why you only have one there?
Why I have what?
Only one CD on the store?
On which store?
On
Bandcamp?
your web shop, I mean.
Oh, my web shop. Well,
yeah.
Are you talking jeffpearceshop.com?
Yep. Is that not the right?
There should. Yeah, that's my shop. But if you go up to music, there should be a lot of CDs.
I'm on the wrong part. That's why. Then never mind.
Okay.
I'm looking at the wrong section right there. So I'm looking at the feature. But I do have a question about your shop though, and not just in regards to that. Do you find that you make more sales on there, or do you find it's more on Bandcamp?
It's more on Bandcamp, and I'll tell you why. On the front page of Bandcamp, they towards the bottom, they have the genre charts. And yes. I've been fortunate that with I want to say this nicely without coming off like a jerk or something, but I've been fortunate that they have an ambient chart, and when I release something, it does pretty well on the ambient chart, and it is sort of it's the snowball effect. People on my mailing list on Bandcamp, they'll be the first to buy it, and then when it shows up on the ambient chart, the people that look at the ambient chart might think to themselves, hey, I'll give this a chance, and then they end up on my list. And I've really picked up a lot of very good and loyal customers that way. It's been surprising to me.
Well, so how does one usually get on the ambient chart? Is it just because you've been selling so well in the past, or was there an actual way that you did that?
Well, Bandcamp gives you a couple of options when it comes to releasing an album. When you put your album, when you make it available, Bandcamp automatically sends out an email notification to people who have bought your stuff in the past and said, hey, Jeff Pearce has a new album. You might remember that you bought such and such album a while back. And then they give the artist the option of being able to send out an email through Bandcamp to anyone that has purchased. So I will usually let Bandcamp let that notification go out day one. And then on day two, I'll just send a follow-up with a lot more detail about the album, things like that.
Yeah.
So, because I know, I mean, look, I buy a lot of music on Bandcamp, so I get a lot of notifications saying, "Hey Jeff, so and so has a new album," and I'm like, "Wow, I'm gonna go pick it up," and that's what I do. But I also get so many of those that it's easy to miss. It's easy for me to skip one, and so that's why I do the second day one a lot, and that seems to help.
Do you do more than one follow-up, or is it just the one?
Oh, I just do the one. I just do the one through Bandcamp, just because I know my audience pretty well.
Okay.
And I've been fortunate to realize over the years that I'm not so much my audience, but I am an ambient music listener. So with meeting people, with meeting listeners at concerts over the years, I've kind of come to the conclusion that ambient listeners we're very pleasant introverts, and we kind of like to be left alone to experience our music. And I've seen it happen with other musicians in my genre in the past that, they just hit hardcore, daily emails and, all of that. And they don't give up on it, and they start to lose their audience because their audience is like, look, I maybe who you are is speaking to me so loud that I can't hear your music, that kind of thing. And so a lot of times space is important, but having something like the web shop and having the ability to control your prices on Bandcamp every so often, and I'd say maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, I'll do a crazy sale on Bandcamp or on my web shop, and I'll send out, it's like, hey, for the, my wife and daughters are binging Fuller House on Netflix this weekend, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. So for this entire weekend, all CDs are $5 and all downloads are name your own price. Nice. Give me something to do, that kind of thing. And with Bandcamp, people have mentioned this, and I've seen this in articles, but I've experienced this, so I know it's true from my experience that when you give Bandcamp listeners a chance to name their own price, a lot of them will generally pay more than you would have asked them in the first place. So that's part of what I would call a Bandcamp culture. And I think that goes beyond the ambient category on Bandcamp. That's all categories. The people that shop at Bandcamp, like was mentioned earlier, you want to support the independents, and that is, as a listener, that's what you want to do. It's like, I've heard good music, and I want to make sure that this artist is going to be able to make it for years to come. And they'll pay more than what you ask. It's really odd. I don't know if we would see that anywhere else, to be honest.
Interesting. Corey, you want to ask some marketing questions?
Oh yeah, definitely. I want to know just kind of what type of marketing that you've done and where you've seen the most success. So like email marketing, ads. I know you do you reach out on Bandcamp and that kind of stuff, but beyond Bandcamp, what else do you do to market your music?
Well, I did run Facebook ads until pardon?
I said until they started to suck.
Well, until something happened. I don't know. I got a notification like in January this past year that my ads manager was completely shut down, that my business manager was shut down because of an ad that went against community standards. The problem was I hadn't run an ad since around Thanksgiving of 2020. So late January 2021, I got this notification, and yeah, I couldn't run Facebook ads anymore. I'd had pretty good luck at that point with Facebook ads, but part of my mindset is, okay, well, if this door is closed for me right now, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna figure out what to do. And at that point, I started looking into ads on YouTube, and that turned out to be very good. That has worked very well. Just as far as growing my mailing list, I haven't even really tried to direct any traffic to my web shop. I've taken the, well, I'm going to try it, how bad could it be approach, and it's worked very well. Yeah, I've gained quite a lot of followers on YouTube compared to where I was before, but a lot of them just went over and signed up for the mailing list on my website. So that was surprising.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
just to clarify, Jeff, so you're running an ad on YouTube to get people onto your mailing list? Is that what you're saying?
I wasn't even trying to do that. That's what was funny. I was just trying to, it's like, what I'll do is I'll just put it out there and see what they do. I had really no objective with the YouTube ads. I figured that it would probably result in some extra video views, which it did. Yeah. But I would put a link in there, like at the header part of the video, saying, hey, if you join my mailing list, you can get a 53-minute version of the song Evening Clouds for free. Click here, just to see what would happen. And yeah, a lot of people took advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Corey, you want to follow up on that?
So other than the ads and, your email list, have you tried any other forms of marketing through either social media or any other platforms?
Well, I did Facebook, and like I said, that worked pretty well until until that door was locked. The same with Instagram, which was hooked into Facebook. That worked okay until the Facebook one went down, and Instagram did too. With my mailing list, I try to keep what I call purposeful contact. So if I don't have anything to offer, I'm not going to write just to say, hey, here's what I'm doing with my day, kind of thing. I think there's enough of that. Usually the idea is, if I'm going to write to them, I have a new video, I have a new album, or I have a sale going on. Just, one of those three. So outside of that, I've not done, I know you can do that with TikTok now. I know there's a lot of things you can look into. I've not really looked into that, just because my daughters are on TikTok, and I just can't imagine how ambient music would be used for that. Unless they start posting videos of cats sleeping or something like that. Maybe quiet music in the background might do it.
That would be a really brilliant idea for an ambient artist, because that
could be.
We're stealing this.
I'm stealing that.
Yeah, steal it. Go ahead. I think it would be more funny to have baby kittens sleeping while Sepultura or Metallica was in the background. It's like, look, it's the soundtrack. Metal. Yeah, it's the soundtrack to their evil little dreams. That kind of thing. Maybe I think my cat's the only one that has evil little dreams, but others might.
Sure,
no,
most cats.
All cats have evil little dreams.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So Jeff, moving right along, because I just realized we're at the 40-minute mark. We've already gone through a lot of stuff. Holy cow. So did you do any type of PR actions with the album, or no?
Well, here's where it gets funny. My college degree from way back in the day is in public relations.
Nice.
And I graduated, well, you'd think it'd be nice, but I graduated in 1989, which was way before the internet. So when the internet came along, I basically had a really obsolete set of skills. All of the, like the newspaper type setting that I would do in jobs. Of course, there really wasn't need for that once I started my own music stuff, but some of the concepts were still the same.
Yep.
And when it came time to do like the PR for it, I did try an agency, and I'm not going to name names, but they wrote a bio that was about it. It missed as many as it hit, I would say, and it got put in a lot of places that those bios would get put, and I really didn't see any response from it. It wasn't terribly expensive, so that was one of those things to where I just said, well, I'll try it, and if it's terrible, I won't do it again. So that's not really the way I go. And again, with my audience, I don't think that's the way they want me to go. To be honest, I think they're more interested in something handwritten or hand typed, sent out via a mailing list. And as far as growing the audience, it sure seems like Bandcamp has done a really good job of that for me. Before that, it was CD Baby that did it. The streaming services have been kind of hit and miss. Of course, when someone is listening to the streaming services, they have a completely different approach to the music than someone who wants physical media, someone who wants to sit down and get to know the artist. With ambient music, it's kind of a mixed blessing with physical media, because it will end up on some playlists and people will just put those playlists on and let them run all day long. But most of the time they're not going to stop and go, hey, what was that song I heard? I really need to find out more about it. They're just going to let it pass and be kind of like musical static in the background, or musical white noise, to just kind of set a mood in their environment. And that's completely fine as far as I'm concerned, but that's not going to really sell any physical media for you. So
I agree.
When it comes to my marketing efforts, I'm going to put more effort into moving physical media, and if not that, then downloads for the people that still do that.
Fair. Corey, did you have a follow-up before I get to the final question?
No, go for it.
Okay, so let's just quickly go over your Savvy Musician Academy experience. Just
Sure.
How long have you been a part of it?
Let's see. I think I got my first course from them in 2016. And that was another, I think it was Facebook for Musicians, something like that. And that was another situation to where I saw an ad on Facebook, and it was the first time I saw the ad. So it wasn't like I'd seen it over and over. I saw it and I thought to myself, well, I'll try it. And if it's terrible, then, I haven't lost that much money. And I tried it, and it was really helpful. So after that, I think it was the online musician that I tried, and I did it with the same approach. It's like, okay, I'll try this. If it's terrible, well, guess what? I've learned a little already, so it's not a total loss. And of course, that was really good as well. So when Leah was doing her other programs, like the Elite program, which was considerably more money, I thought to myself, well, I'll try it. And if I lose a ton of money, I lose a ton of money, but I've had good luck so far. And it's been a great program with that program, especially. And it was not, I guess it wasn't really advertised as such, but the material is good. However, the interaction with other musicians is fantastic. Other people that are going through the course as well, even in, Leah said something with like our first Zoom meeting that I thought was kind of silly, but she said, this is the first meeting. There's a lot of people here, but I can tell you already that some of you are going to end up being friends for life. And it's like, I'm kind of an introverted guy. And, it's like, okay, well, that was a funny thing to say, but that's not going to be the case. I swear now, about 3 years later, it's like some of the people from that course are some of the closest friends I have. And we will do that when we have our own private Zoom meetings, just to check up on each other's lives and stuff. We'll talk about this much about music business stuff, and then this much about life stuff, because it all kind of feeds each other. Yeah. If your life is if you're going through a ton of bad stuff, it's like, yeah, that's going to affect your music, and that's going to affect your marketing efforts, and it should. Life is life. I mean, that's what happens.
Agreed.
But that was probably the biggest surprise, and the best thing that I got from any of her courses was the interaction with other musicians.
Cool. Now, the final part of that question I'm going to ask you is, I know it takes a chunk of change to invest into learning this type of stuff. I'm not going to say ask how much, obviously, but do you think that the amount that you invested into learning about the marketing was outweighed by the amount of money that you were able to earn back?
Oh, easily. It paid for itself. It paid for itself. Let's see. I joined up on that one, the Superfan System Elite. That was like July of 2018. And just by the stuff that we talked about regarding Facebook ads, putting together good emails to send out to our list, I'd say I made that back by January of the following year. So like January of 2019.
Nice.
Just because of I always did pretty good, but sometimes when someone holds a light up to the things that you've done and said, well, maybe this approach here isn't so great. It's like, well, okay, I'll try it. And if it doesn't work, I can always switch back. And of course it worked very well. And that was, that's why you sign up for those programs, to maybe not necessarily build everything from the ground up, but to tweak what you have that's not working, that you don't even know isn't working.
Yeah, fair enough. Corey, do you have any final questions for Jeff?
No, I think we've given people a lot to think about and mull over and learn from. So yeah, I'm good on my end. What about you, Curtis?
I got nothing other than, Jeff, can you tell people where to follow you on social media or to a store or something?
Yeah, well, my main website is jeffpearcemusic.com, and that's Pearce is spelled Pearce. I'm like one of 4 people that spell it that way in the world, I think. The others being my wife and daughters. And from there, there's links to Facebook, which is Facebook/Jeff Pearce Music. And if you want to check it out on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Jeff Pearce Music. So yeah. And Bandcamp, you can just search for Jeff Pearce. I show up.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. And with that, I say party on, Corey.
Party on, Curtis.